Hello, everyone. Welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Kit. As always, we here on this channel always want to learn something new and find out what's happening in this great world of ours. And today we're going to be checking out something a little bit different. This video in question that we are checking out is called SEAL Team 6 Smoked These Pirates, Jessica Buchanan Hostage Rescue. Now, I've never heard of this story, so obviously I'll be adding in my commentary here and there. I don't want to do too much because obviously this is first time checking out this channel. This channel is titled, and it's very important, called Brothers in Arms. So, as a favor for me, please, please, please be sure to support the original content creators. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, and more importantly, it helps build up their channel because, you know, hey, let's face it, a lot of time and effort and energy is made into making these videos. So be sure to check it out. And if this is content all of you guys and gals like us checking out, give us your feedback because your feedback is fundamentally important. And also be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to American Learns if you haven't had the chance to do so already. So without further ado, since I'm in charge of the ones and twos, let's get ready to play this video in a 3, a 2, a 1.
The Navy SEALs clenched their fists as they heard Jessica Buchanan desperately pleading for her life. The American teacher had participated in a demining project in Somalia before being kidnapped by several pirates. Now she lay sick and starving somewhere in the desert, defenseless against the whims of her heavily armed captors. The operators of the famous SEAL Team 6 would do everything to save her. But one bad piece of news followed the next. Gale force winds would force the sailors to jump out of the aircraft at more than twice the wind speeds of what would have normally canceled the jump. On top of that, they were in the middle of a solar storm, which could block radio communications to support units for hours. The SEALs would have to prove that they were among the best before they even touched the ground. Any other mission would have been delayed by at least a day. But the warriors knew Jessica didn't have those 24 hours.
Wow.
And so, they donned their parachutes, checked their oxygen tanks, and then jumped into the unknown darkness, and one of the most daring hostage rescues ever.
You know, I think we've all seen those videos or documentary videos. I remember way back in the early 2000s, some of these videos came out, but, you know, Navy SEAL training, and I gotta say, it's some of the most brutal stuff I've ever seen. That would break me. That would break me, but, I mean, Jesus Christ, good stuff through and through. Wow, I didn't know that they had to go through all of that. Plus, jumping into the dark like that. I can't even think about that. That is just a lot of courage and dedication. Shout out to them.
Jessica Buchanan was 32 years old and living with her husband in one of the safer areas of Somalia. Together with her Danish colleague, Paul Thisted, she worked for a large aid organization, educating children about the dangers of anti-personnel mines that were widespread throughout the country. On her next assignment, she had to travel dangerously close to the so-called Green Line, an invisible line behind which lay the areas controlled by Islamists. The security situation in the Horn of Africa was already tense as it was, with bomb attacks and small skirmishes between rival tribes occurring almost regularly. However, Jessica had not come to Africa to hide behind walls, so she decided to conduct the anti-mine training anyway. At first, everything seemed to go without incident. But on October 25, 2011, the day of their return trip, everything was about to change for the two humanitarian workers. The first thing that struck Jessica as suspicious was her driver. Instead of their usual chauffeur, a completely unknown man was sitting in the Land Cruiser who was supposed to take them to the airport. Her Danish colleague, however, seemed to be in a hurry and climbed into the passenger.
Stupid. God damn it. If it's somebody you don't know, you don't get... All right, well, I guess he was in a hurry. Hey, was being in a rush perfect for you?
Seat unimpressed, which is why Jessica stopped worrying. Then, after only 10 minutes of driving, it happened. A massive car forced the convoy to an abrupt halt. Nearly 30 men with AK-47 assault rifles jumped out of several vehicles, banging on the Land Cruiser's windows and yelling orders in a language Jessica didn't understand. Before she could even realize what was happening to her, one of the pirates pointed his gun to her head while her security advisor was violently dragged from the vehicle. A heavily armed man sat down in the vacant seat and gave orders to Jessica's driver, who willingly hit the gas and showed who he was really working for. It wasn't long before they stopped again and switched vehicles amid loud shouting from the pirates. The whole thing seemed very well planned, although the kidnappers had obviously consumed too much khat, a plant common in Africa which acts similar to amphetamines. After the pirates stopped in the middle of nowhere, Jessica and Paul had to prepare their own execution, only to be sent back to the car just before their tragic end. The pirates didn't care at all about the lives of the relief workers, but in order to collect the highest possible ransom, they needed their hostages unharmed. For them, it was fun to mock the powerlessness of the West on the other side of the world. Jessica and Paul, meanwhile, were living their nightmare. They could do nothing, as they were at the mercy of the barbarians and didn't even know if anyone had noticed their disappearance. But Washington was not only aware of the abduction of the humanitarian workers, it had already initiated first countermeasures. Jessica's aid organization had notified the American embassy in Nairobi immediately after the assault, which in turn informed the FBI. From here, phone calls were made to family members to reassure them and dissuade them from acting rashly. Even before the end of the day, high-ranking officials briefed U.S. President Barack Obama, and while the pirates were preparing to contact authorities, Jessica Buchanan was already a top priority at the White House. Paul Thisted later recounted that the best thing that could have happened to him was to be kidnapped with an American. Both hostages and pirates were soon to find out what that meant. Almost 3 months later, Jessica was still in captivity. Good news was that she was still alive. Bad news was that despite slow negotiations, no agreement could be made for a ransom, as the pirates had even refused $1.5 million.
So in other words, people were willing to meet you again. You can't negotiate with pirates or people that want to shake you down because they're going to want more, and more. We've seen videos like this all the time. We've seen stories like this all the time where you got some person and they're never back down. Never compromise. Never compromise with scumbags.
Enough money that each of them would be set up for at least 30 years. Every day, Jessica fought hunger, heat, and the constant fear that the kidnappers would harm her. As if all of that wasn't bad enough, a urinary tract infection had spread through her body, and in the worst-case scenario, it could be fatal. In a final video message to Western authorities, she joined Paul in begging for their lives and a quick payment of the ransom. Otherwise, she would either die from her infection or fall victim to the whims of pirates drugged with khat. That night, Jessica gazed up at the brightly lit starry sky and prayed. Unbeknownst to her, her prayers were answered when 10,000 miles away, 24 cell phones suddenly rang. The men picking up the phones had long beards and were covered with tattoos. Some of them had the stature of a bear, while others looked like hardened marathon runners. But they all had one thing in common: their aura of absolute calm, self-confidence, and professionalism. They were all part of the famous SEAL Team 6, who had just been alerted for a hostage rescue. Over the next few weeks, SEAL Team 6's Blue Squadron trained day and night to rescue Jessica, her pleading voice from the video message always in the back of their minds. The warriors had hunted gruesome men all over the world, but when it came to the lives of women and children, they were especially motivated. On January 25, 2012, the time had finally come. President Obama himself had given the green light for the hostage rescue. 24 of the best warriors the U.S. had to offer would risk their lives to try to free both hostages unharmed. Their plan was to parachute over Somalia and then approach the pirate camp on foot so as not to alert the enemy with loud noises. At the U.S. operations base in Djibouti, around 500 miles from Jessica's location, everything military-related which was useful in some way was gathered. At this point, the total operation cost was already well over $100 million. That was how much America was willing to spend to save just one citizen.
Wow.
With final preparations completed, the SEALs boarded their C-130 transport aircraft and took off for Mogadishu. Remarkably, the pilots themselves had only just arrived and had been on a 9-hour flight right before, but performed their job just like business as usual.
Shout out to the pilots. Obviously, there's a lot of energy and training that needs to be done. Plus, doing doing that kind of stuff does take a toll on the body. And, um, we always hear the stories of what these pilots have to go through the training. So, I know right now it's focused on SEAL Team 6, as it should be, but we're not for those pilots. Those Navy SEALs will not get there. And seriously, the amount of training it takes to maintain or pilot a vehicle like that, even in obviously, what was it called earlier on the video? Solar storm and high wind. Especially to maintain the vehicle so it doesn't crash. I mean, because you don't want that to happen. I mean, duh. But wow, it takes a lot of dedication. In fact, let me ask this to our audience in the comment section below. If you are a former pilot, be it helicopter, airplane, you served in the military, what kind of training did you have to go through? How many flight hours have you done? It's one thing to do like a 9-hour, operation, then land, and then do another operation. If any of you, or if you know somebody who has done something like that or longer, hey, type in the comment section below. We'd like to hear back from all of you. And if there's videos that we should check out about what some of the training that pilots go through, we would love to hear that from you, our audience. So the only way we're going to improve or get better is if we hear some things from all of you hip cool cats. So again, shout out to the pilots, 10 out of 10. Can't get anywhere without them. Thought I could make that rhyme, but I can't.
All eyes, including those of the president, who was monitoring the operation via live feed, were now on the hostage rescue. As it turned out later, the kidnappers wanted to change their position on exactly this night, but had eaten spoiled meat and therefore ended up staying put.
Oh, wow. Okay, let this be a lesson, all right? This is why I watch Hell's Kitchen, I know, or Kitchen Nightmares. Completely different subject, but again, it's always good to make sure that you're keeping stock and an eye on your food. You don't want to eat rotten food. That's why Chef Ramsay always snaps at people at Kitchen Nightmares. That's why Chef Ramsay always yells at people at Hell's Kitchen. You're going to serve, undercooked food, raw food. Come on, get out of here. Oh, well, but they had it coming, these bad guys. They ate spoiled meat. I hope all of them had the runs, as they should. I mean, come on. Come on, Jack.
On the other side, however, a violent solar storm erupted, which hit the Earth's magnetic field so hard that radio waves, and thus radio communications with other support units, were disrupted. Meaning, in a worst-case scenario, no quick reaction force, no situation reports, and no close air support. On top of that, wind speeds were more than double what would have canceled a regular mission. But the rescue of Jessica Buchanan was not a regular mission, and every one of the 24 men on board was willing to take that extra risk. After about 3 hours in the air, the C-130 had reached their drop point. The SEALs rose from their seats, hooked up their oxygen tanks, and then dropped from more than 20,000 feet into the 40-knot wind. After only a few seconds of free fall, the operators had already reached 120 miles per hour. A speed which is normally achieved by competitive athletes in optimal conditions. Despite the absurd wind situation, the SEALs managed to land semi-cohesively, with a few runaways who were dragged across the savannah for hundreds of yards before separating from the parachute. Holding security for each other, the sailors put on their combat gear and wrapped up their chutes. From now on, they had to walk several miles through the more than 100-degree hot Somali night. After nearly an hour of silent marching, the sailors reached their last cover before irreversibly committing to the assault. They were now only 500 meters from the pirate camp. Along the way, they had changed direction several times to always have the wind in their faces, eliminating any possibility of being spotted early. Every little detail counted when it came to sneaking as close as possible to the enemy. A hostage rescue differs from normal combat mission in that the hostage's life is even more important than fighting the enemy. The SEALs would literally run through machine gun fire if it meant they could save Jessica. Their goal was to remain undetected for as long as possible, then speed was of the essence. As the 24 warriors began to move again, the longest hour of their lives was about to begin. They had long been within earshot of the pirates, and only night's darkness kept them from the attention of enemy guards. As if in slow motion, one foot was silently placed forward, the weight shifted, and only then followed the next foot. An experienced SEAL named Justin Sheffield led the group. At his
Again, probably because I just noticed. Yeah, I'm pretty sure all of you noticed this too. But there are people's faces who are pixelated. You don't see who they are. Chances are it's either they are, again, high-ranking top officials, or they're still serving in SEAL Team 6, or many just don't want anyone to know that they served in SEAL Team 6, so the right to privacy, of course. So just throwing it out there, just something that maybe people should notice. And seriously, shout out to the entire guys of SEAL Team 6 and what they have to do. I mean, Jesus Christ, the training, I don't think I'd last a second, so there you go.
hand signal, the operators spread out far to the left and right to bring as many rifles forward as possible without walking into others' field of fire. Snipers positioned themselves on the outer flanks and monitored their comrades' actions. As the sailors moved forward in perfect unison, they could watch through their thermal scopes as the enemy sentries slowly became anxious and woke the other pirates. The SEALs quickened their pace, still perfectly steady. Sheffield aimed his laser at one of the Somali guards, and without having to say anything, his comrades did the same. The infrared beam was completely invisible to the pirates without night vision, but they sensed something moving in the darkness. With a loud clack, they racked their heavy PKM machine guns and got into position. The pirates pointed their weapons roughly in the direction from which they heard the sounds. The SEALs increased their pace once again, now less concerned with noise discipline than with closing the distance to the hostages before all hell broke loose.
All right, come on.
With a deafening noise, the pirates' machine gun kicked off and fired deadly 7.62 millimeter rounds at the operators, followed by several AK-47 assault rifles. The snipers had been waiting for just this moment and almost immediately silenced the enemy machine guns before seeking new targets. With surgical precision, the Navy SEALs returned fire while simultaneously fighting their way forward to find Jessica. In a similar hostage rescue, French special forces failed to overwhelm the hostiles quickly enough, resulting in the execution of the hostage.
Oh, no. That's devastating to hear. Jesus Christ.
Each of the SEALs was prepared to do anything to avoid just that. The hundreds of hours on the shooting range under simulated stress conditions paid off when they spotted two pirates with AKs standing right over Jessica, who was crouched on the ground. Sheffield and another SEAL broke away from the formation and both made sure these pirates never kidnapped anyone again with accurate shots. When Sheffield saw the American's bright face, he dove on top of her in the ongoing firefight, shielding her from the enemy crossfire with his own body. More SEALs.
Again, absolute dedication. You hear stories like this, but every time, again, the mission is priority. Priority number one. Obviously, you're referencing movies and films, but in all reality, these guys are the best of the best. So put some respect.
Joined in, and within seconds, the teacher was protected by multiple layers of the world's best warriors. Although the operators themselves all had wives and children, they put the hostage's life above their own. Meanwhile, another comrade had taken care of Paul Thisted, protecting him from enemy fire as well. After all 9 pirates were neutralized and the gunfire stopped, Sheffield put Jessica on his shoulders and sprinted out of the pirate camp as far away from any danger as possible. The other SEALs formed a human shield around the two, ready to resume the fight at any moment. After running as far as his feet would carry him after this energy-sapping battle, Sheffield dropped Jessica off. Pararescue jumpers, the U.S. Air Force's specialized rescue force, tended to the American woman, who still couldn't believe she had just been rescued by her countrymen. As she anxiously asked, "What if more come? More could come." Sheffield coldly replied, "We are SEAL Team 6. We will kill anyone who tries to harm you now." She was visibly reassured by that convincing answer of the bearded warrior who had just rescued her from the worst situation of her life. After the SEALs blew up the pirates' arms depot, they still had to march to the landing zone of the Exfiltration helicopter. Whenever a suspicious noise was heard somewhere, or reports of enemies came in over the radio, it took only a few seconds for Jessica to find herself under a layer of Navy SEALs trying to protect her with their own bodies. Fortunately, however, there was no more fighting, and the American, accompanied by the SEALs, ran independently to the Black Hawk that would fly her to freedom. Behind her lay 3 months of captivity among heavily armed pirates, during which she could never be sure that she would live to see the next day. The selfless efforts of the men of SEAL Team 6 had finally saved her. As she reflected on the last few months, one of the soldiers on board knelt beside Jessica, looked her in the eye, handed her a beautifully folded American flag, and said, "Welcome home, Jessica." For those who have made it this far, thanks for watching. If you want to support our work, feel free to leave a like and tell us what you think of the hostage rescue. Should the U.S. government have simply transferred enough ransom so that the hostages were released peacefully? Or was the deployment of SEAL Team 6 just the right thing to do, in keeping with the motto, "We do not negotiate with terrorists"? Whatever you think, we're eager to hear your opinions. Thanks also to Justin Sheffield, whose book contributed greatly to this video. You'll find the link in the video description. Trust us, it's a great read.
I'll be sure to check that out. And in fact, that's why we always post the original link to all the videos we check out in the description box below. So first of all, I didn't want to pause too much because first of all, this story had me entrapped. I wanted to know more. And look, it's like sometimes I like to add some funny commentary here and there. But look, when a serious video like this comes along, you got to give it the respect it's due. All right. First of all, number one, the original video link to this channel that we're checking out is in the description box below. So please, after this video that you check out, go to the original channel, subscribe to their channel. You want to read that book? Hell, I want to read that book now. And first of all, that it must have been the most devastating 3 months that Jessica Buchanan had to go through. My goodness, I can only imagine the sheer terror. I can't imagine it, better yet. I don't think any of us can. The sheer terror and harassment and abuse that she probably went through. And the thing is, she was there for a good cause to, get rid of those landmines. And let's face it, it's not only Somalia where there's landmines. There's a lot of war zones or former conflict zones that have landmines. And unfortunately, with their use, even though they're man-made, they grow like weeds. And, of course, innocent people, women, children, men, animals are victims of that. And it's a good cause to get rid of those landmines as they should be removed. But as for the original question asked in this video, you can't give money to people like that. You just can't. Even if things might seem in the up and up, they'll do it again and again and again. And who's to say they won't back down on their word? You have to go in and not negotiate. It's just the act of criminals or people who are truly sociopathic. I mean, think about it. They're holding somebody's life hostage. They have a gun to their head. They said they're willing to end their lives. What makes you think they're going to be telling the truth that they'll let them go? They're not. You can't compromise. You just can't do it. It's simple as that. But what are your thoughts? And to my original question, too, I'll be even it up here a little bit more. So if we have any pilots or people who know any pilots about, flying through that, can you tell us some of your stories about what you had to deal with, some of your training? How many times you've been in the air and when you've been told, hey, you got to go back in the air again? Let's hear that, because I think a lot of people don't realize that pilots put themselves through a lot of pressure, and they have to keep the machine up in the air. So we always hear stories about what some of these great pilots have to go through. We here at Americans Learn would like to hear some of those stories if you choose to share. Also, shout out to SEAL Team 6, got the job done. Jessica's home. And it's simple as that. If this is a channel you guys want us to check out more, or if there's content similar to it that all of you hip cool cats would like us to check out more, please type in the comment section below. And look, I like to be lighthearted and have some fun commentary here and there, but when it comes down to videos like this, it's not the right thing to do. You got to give it the respect. And seriously, big respect to SEAL Team 6. And big respect to the entire channel that put this story together. Please check out the original channel. It's in the description box below. Go to that link, subscribe to them, and if you haven't, well, I'm gonna speak for myself. I'm once I get some things put together, I might have to purchase that book and read it myself, because there's probably a lot more to that story than in this 15-minute video. Done perfectly, but there's probably a lot more stories in there as well. So, without further ado, I'll see all of you hip cool cats on the flip side. Take good care of yourselves and keep on winning and drink water.